Welcome to episode 68 of our board game podcast, A Master's Degree in Rolling Not Good. I'm your host, Eddie, and joining me, sitting opposite me on the interwebs, a man who I watched nearly exhaust all by himself whilst one of his robots was choking him from the inside. Gaz! Say hi, Gaz.
Hi, guys. Yep, we definitely do roll not good.
Yeah.
Well,
Why
I
would-
mostly roll not good.
Good thing there's no rolling in the game. Why would you design such a robot that when you are inside it, it slowly kills you? Can you explain to me thematically why that's a thing?
Yeah, because it gives you big damage numbers.
But why is your life force its fuel?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe my fuel is its fuel, like
Okay.
a baby,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Like without offending anybody, but pregnancy's kind of like a parasite, right? Like they steal half the energy. Being adjacent to two pregnancies with my partner, I can definitely tell that her life force was sucked for at least 9 months of that happening. So, and I'm sure anyone else who's been adjacent to the process can probably attest to that. So I think I feel like it's like that,
Yeah,
except
okay.
this made me hit things harder.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
it's that pregnant woman's strength, Gaz.
That's
That's
that is it. They do talk about that. They talk about like superhuman strength for mothers. I don't know if it comes in until they have the baby, but maybe they get it while there.
it's one of the
Yeah,
level up options.
cool.
Is
I
there
mean,
a
this is going to be a new record of going completely off the rails.
no?
It
It's
the shortest
relevant
amount of
to your prism, okay? In fact, there's a follow-up here. Are you
time.
ready? Is there a bot you appear to be missing in your lineup? Like a self-brittle bot, an obstacle remover bot. Actually, that second one sounds kind of legit. Like
A
a little...
self brittle. Why would I want to give myself brittle? Are you talking
Oh,
about because I was killing myself so much?
well, not really. I'm just trying to see what you might be missing. What does the prism miss? And I actually have a couple of ideas. Are you
Oh,
ready?
okay, excellent. So this is just a loaded question for me to say I'm not really sure, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
know.
Well, I know.
Since you asked.
That's right. Since you so desperately asked that I've written all
Mhm.
this down, I may as well go into it. So Prism has a bunch of bots that do a bunch of things, okay? But there's a couple that I don't think it does. So I've come up with a couple. One of them is called a Roomba, right? So its focus is loot tokens,
Yeah.
which is then superseded by treasure tokens. So you can't transfer into it, guys. And it can't be granted movement, so you can't make it go where you want, etc. It's complete on autopilot. Its whole job is to run around and get loot. So every loot tile it collects, it obviously is collecting it for you, will increase its shield and retaliate value by 1 to a maximum of 3. And then once it has 3 tokens, it then returns to you and gives you the tokens, and thus it drops again. And then it goes back to, going to get loot and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, if it ends its turn adjacent to you, yeah, and then it continues. What do you think?
I love it. I think it's a brilliant idea. I actually do. I think a small tweak to make it less offensive, like uh, it goes and picks up the loot. It does have to return to you. Maybe its shield goes up by 1 for every loot token it has, but its movement goes down by 1
Mm,
as it gets a bit more. Uh, Similar to the fox, it treats targeting its initiative counts as 99, so
okay.
that it gets ignored mostly. But I do like the idea that you can jump into it, and then every action you play is a loot 1.
Okay.
At the end of your turn. No, actually, at the end of your turn, your end of turn looting becomes loot 1 instead of
Yeah, okay.
just on your tile.
Yeah. No, it's cool.
I
We
actually
yeah.
think that legit, if I turned over, not level 9, because I haven't seen my level 9. If I turned my level 9 cards over and it was a Roomba, I would be a bit disappointed. But if I was to turn over like level 4 cards and one of them, right, was this loot gathering vacuum bot, I'd
Mm.
actually be like, I might not take it, but this is legit. Like, I wouldn't be like, okay, Daddy, have you gotten in there with a Sharpie? Like,
Yeah. I'm now worried that level 9 there's something similar to this, and it's almost like people who know this are just like, okay, this is awkward.
Orcs,
because it's like not as
spoilers.
cool as their idea, but it's doing something similar, right?
It's like a worse version of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one more. I have one more.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
disco bot. Okay.
Okay.
And these aren't like jokes either, right? It's a
No,
disco
I
bot.
can. Yeah, I can hear by the names you've given them. They're
Well, this
serious.
one I didn't know what to call it, okay? Because it's all
Yeah.
based around the elements. So depending on what elements are currently strong waning, it'll increase its stats. So it starts at 2 health, does a 2 attack, 2 move. But if Earth is currently up, its health goes up by 2, max health, right? It fires up +1 damage, air +1 move, ice +1 shield, dark, its attacks on it have disadvantage, light, it attacks with advantage, something along those lines, which I think would be interesting because you have no elemental affinity based on
Mm.
the prism. But this bot will obviously be powered by either mobs or the party.
Mm.
So it has
I
varying ways of usefulness.
Yeah. No, again, I think that's a really cool idea. It's yeah, if you could attune all the elements to the demons,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, light attacks advantage, maybe dark attacks disadvantage, and you go through them that way. I don't know what you fire has retaliate, etc., etc. And it'd be a cool. I don't think we've really seen anything that uses elements where it doesn't consume them. Like,
No.
get bonus if element is strong, or get less bonus if it's waning, but
Mm.
don't interact with the element at all.
Yeah.
And that's a cool concept is in general. Like I think that's a really cool idea, and having it in this little bot would be pretty cool. And especially if, as you said, if it was a move to attack 2, like type Delia, where it was kind of pretty average, but having the elements out where you can't get the elements out because you're the prism and you don't generate elements,
Mm.
but then it makes it go kind of like OP levels of crazy,
Mm.
means you have to jump through a lot of hoops and go down a bunch of paths that you probably don't
Mm.
really want to go down for anything else, but this one bot becomes this like Voltron, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, again, I think that's really cool.
Uh, you know how characters, like I've played characters, and I think you have as well, where you've got an attack or something, and if you consume an element, it'll increase that attack or whatever.
Yeah.
And you know how there's monsters where they do a ability or something like a ice demon, a frost demon, but it fires up, it consumes it, and it does less damage, or it takes damage, or something along those lines. Is there a situation that you can remember and think of? This has only just come to me. Is there a class where the elemental consumption for something is mandatory? Generating is mandatory.
No, not that I can think of.
Because you know how it happens with the monsters. If something
Mm,
creates it, I think a really interesting kind of double-edged sword character will be if it's up, it's not an option. Like me, turn 1, it's an option to make the
yep,
element.
yep.
That it's the same thing for consuming. Like you don't want a certain element up for some class because
Mm,
it's going to actually hurt the person, and you're
yep.
praying that something doesn't do it. But if that element happens to be made, you're kind of screwed a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, there would be a cool system there. Like it kind of was with the drill, and this wasn't a negative in the sense of like, but you know how if you were at a certain pressure and you use certain abilities, it would drop you down. Like you had to do it; it wasn't
Yeah.
optional. It's like if this is you, you go to here. Again, that's a cool idea about a different way of using the elements. Of being, if you, uh, it does an attack for, but if wind is up, it does. You have to consume it, and you get -1 attack.
Yeah.
Right. And if you base the elements around that, I mean, you get to choose the cards, but it also then limits your choices around it. Like, you've got to make sure you combo them in the right way because you might have a really cool move ability that generates wind, but that means you can't do your really cool attack ability on another card for 2 turns because you're going to nerf it a bit.
It
Um,
sounds
or
like
give
something.
yourself muddle or something like that, right? Like,
Yeah. It sounds like something that would have tied in with the Germinate already because they're so restricted with their melee and range, the two different decks, and also range, right? Like
mm,
things can only hit. So you're praying that they don't move into a certain way or someone doesn't move them.
yeah.
It feels like that kind of restriction where it's a extra brain burn trying to work that out.
Yeah, I think so. It's yeah, definitely. It sounds like a restrict. I don't think you could pair it with other restrictions because I think it would feel very restrictive, as
Mm.
in you'd be like, it would be annoying because you'd be playing suboptimally. that's almost more annoying than not being able to play, right? Like if you look and go, I can't play this card with a Geminate, and there's not many other classes that do this, but you get that situation sometimes, and you go, the game just physically doesn't let me play this card because it won't do anything. That feels bad, but if you've got these cool cards you want to use and they're just going to be slightly worse, that feels worse because you're just like, oh, efficiency. Like, like you spend so much time planning your turns around these efficiency turns,
Yeah.
right? And then to have your turns make you less efficient, and you'd be sitting there going like, oh, this would be an attack 5, 3 targets, except that like Earth is up, so it's like an attack 1, like it turns into like a wet lettuce leaf or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
love
I
that.
feel like that'd be more frustrating because you'd be able to see the play there and be like, ah,
It's if you were to create a character around this, anyone, Isaac, someone, um, I think that it's like a reverse elementalist where element's almost bad, but you need some of them. So some of the cards, like in other words, use this attack, it's going to consume fire and it really beefs it up. And then
mm,
mandatory under that, it creates earth, wind, and dark, which you then have to factor in to the following turns for every card. Because
yeah.
elementals from Gloomhaven just had so many elements, obviously tied to different things. It's almost like a reverse. Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
Mm.
I'll stop running away with that.
No, no, that's right. The other thing you could do too is make the choices, but just put the agency in the player's hand at the start and go, you're going to pick a couple of persistence to have out, but they are opposites. So, for example, while fire is like strong or waning, you have +1 attack, but while ice is strong or waning, you have -1 attack.
Mm,
So you're picking that and you're like, well, okay, cool, I'll play around fire. But if ice comes up, you're suddenly weakened and you need to have ways of
mm,
dealing with that. So maybe then you put cards in there that turn any element into another element so that you
mm,
have the ability to go, the bottom of it is turn any element into another element. And so you can convert the bad one you want into the good one, but you're not consuming it. It's just sitting there. Again, that idea of the buffing you, but you're playing the persistent you want. So you're like, oh, I'm kind of going for the fire grass build, right? So I really don't want to see ice, whatever the opposite grass is, a wind, I guess, because it's the only one left.
what is the opposite of grass? Anyway,
Well,
sorry.
light, dark, fire, ice. It's got to be grass, wind, right? It's the only thing. Earth,
Sure.
earth, wind. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, I like the idea. I think the idea is really cool. Like some form of negative, like you want to see elements and there's a boost, but you don't want to see other elements and there's a negative. But make sure that those two are opposites. Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
and I, after a couple of drinks, could sit down and create like 15 classes. Um, it'll take a while, but I reckon we got some good ideas. I reckon we could definitely pull something out of our ass that'll be different to everything else in the game that
Well,
everyone will most likely loathe. But
yeah, I mean, create classes is completely separate objective to make a good class, right? Like we didn't
yes,
say anything about them being good and or balanced. We just said they're going to be created.
yeah.
Like anybody can cook. Is the food edible? Hey, you didn't say edible food. You just wanted food, right? Like, so yeah.
I want to have a quick plug for Rove, the new board game that's got a couple days left on Kickstarter. I have actually backed it. This was a game that the designers were the ones that actually brought out Crimson Scales, which was a fan-made expansion or standalone expansion to Gloomhaven. And it had its own, I think, its own campaign. It had its own classes. That was all completely fan made ultimately and play tested and everything, and then brought out and
Is this
produced.
was that with the developers or creators, whoever you call them, from New Zealand?
I don't know.
Or am I making that up?
You
Am I just giving New Zealand a random
possibly?
plug? Like, hey, New
Yeah,
Zealand,
go New
you're great.
Zealand.
Yeah. I mean,
Go
like, I'm fine
Iceland.
with that. Like, until someone tells me I'm wrong. But yeah, cool. Go New Zealand.
But there's only a couple of days left. It is well past its funding goal. A couple of notes on it because it is made by the people who did Crimson Scale, so it's going to be quite inspired by Gloomhaven and its system.
Mm.
But I did see, I think, a quote on their Kickstarter campaign page from Isaac himself, so I think that there's a bit of a nod and a blessing there, which is pretty cool to see.
Was the quote like, "Hey, you stole my game.
Stop it!
You'll hear from my lawyers"? Like, is that the quote?
It wasn't. Oh, it might have been, but they've kind of magic marketed over it. You know, AI
Oh,
does some
so it
incredible
sounds good,
things.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like, hey, you lawyers.
But some of the actual campaign itself, they've got a system in there called choice and consequence. I've only got a couple of little key things about it. I haven't read the rulebook or anything. So each
Sorry, I haven't
threat,
read the rule book for Frosthaven
I
either,
know
and we're playing that, so
that will be fine, right? Each threat you choose to set aside. So you've got like two fires to put out, right? Two quests, two whatever. So we going off. It's the opposite to Frosthaven, where this person's like, "Hey, I really need you to do something," and we've gone all the way over here. If you ignore this person and you go over there, this gets worse,
I love
right?
that.
So it's basically each threat you choose to set aside will be that much more dangerous as a result when you return later. Your first journey will only represent half of the possible outcomes from your efforts in Chorus. Chorus is, I believe, the world
Yeah.
that Rover's set in. Each time you play a card, and possibly others, it will actually flip there's cards that flip other cards and flip themselves over, which is maybe a little bit of a buttons and bugs kind of thing, where you've only got the 4 cards and they flip over to equal the 8, which I think is pretty cool. And basically, many of your skills will work on a rally and rave um, like system, where one side gathers the power, but when they're flipped, it's like a generator and a spender almost, which is
Okay.
a little bit different again. Each rover of the classes has 2 parts of progression, so built into them. So they accumulate into highly specialized and immensely powerful combatants that can shrug off the worst of what Chorus has to offer. And something I actually really like that's probably it's basically the same thing that we currently have. Each enemy in Frosthaven in the Gloomhaven system has 8 ability cards that get
Mm.
shuffled and you draw them to see what they're doing. Well, in this, there is like 4, there's a booklet of the enemies and there's 4 cards of their abilities that they do. They always start off with the first one. On their turn, they're going to do this. And then every subsequent turn, you roll an enemy activation die. And it's got like 1, 2, or 3 with
Mm.
different variations of 1s, 2s, and 3s on there. And you move a marker onto the cards that rotate this way to determine
Yeah,
what they're going to do. So you can see everything out of what they can do, but it's still up to a little bit of RNG as to what that token's
that's
going to
pretty
land
content.
on,
That's cool.
which is pretty cool. So
Mm.
they estimate about 60 hours for a full campaign playthrough, and that will let you experience roughly, I think, 60% of the game.
Okay. What's just for comparisons, what's Frosthaven/Gloomhaven's expected hours playtime?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. More than 60, right?
Well,
Because I
we've
mean, if their
been
scenario takes 3 hours, say on average, and you're probably gonna do at least 100?
maybe. I think there's 140. I don't know if you'll do 100. You might do something like 70 to 80. And there are
Okay,
going to be
that's
people out there who might skip job postings.
so
Um,
even if you did 60 of them, if you just beeline for the core storyline and
mm,
managed to solve all of the puzzles and everything, you're still probably
mm,
hitting 60 to 70, and at 2 to 3 hours per thing, you're probably getting close to, you know,
mm,
200 hours, right? So, okay, cool. It's just I'm just interested in
mm,
comparing because if I only this is Gloomhaven Frosthaven's the only of these campaign style dungeon crawler esque legacy slash whatever other thing you want to jam into the kind of genre of game. Um, and so I don't know how others are, and I know I've
yeah.
seen some others that you've had, and I've heard of some others, but I've never actually got to play them, and I don't know like I don't know. Are they as long, right? Like, is the say let's just say Frosthaven's 150 hours. If if is that standard or is that long or is that short, right? And I don't know. I don't know. So it's interesting when you say 60. I mean, compared to 200 hours, that sounds really short. But I mean, 60 hours is also still a long time.
I think they're
Like,
factoring in setup as well. Apparently, their system is easier and quicker to set up and put away, kind of thing.
yeah, okay.
Um, I don't think it's going to be as drawn out, maybe with outpost phases and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, cool. No, it sounds really good. So are we after this? We're not worrying about Gloomhaven 2.0 anymore. That's just like now we're
No,
pro.
we'll potentially run both. The standard edition has standees in it only, so they're not doing miniatures, which
Oh,
is
nah, bin in the bin.
well, hang on. Means it's more cost effective for people to get the full game experience with standees. And then you can get the miniatures extra. And at the moment, and the only main reason I'm saying all this is that this game is not going to retail. At least not they haven't. There's no plans at the moment to
Yeah.
go to retail. And if this is anything like Gloomhaven, at least the first print run, their secondhand market's going to go nuts for
Yeah,
these.
true. Because Crimson Scales is still like impossible to get now, right?
Well, I think
Like
it's not actually going to happen again. I was in for a reprint, and I think they've pulled the pin on it.
the
Um,
Crimson Scales.
I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's
So yeah,
even.
you're right. Like
Yeah,
if this is any good, right? And I mean, it's by the designers, and Crimson Scales was ridiculously popular from what I hear. You're right. Like this is going to do a Gloomhaven first printing thing where people are going to get theirs, and then it's going to be like, oh my god, do you know someone who's met someone who has a copy of Gloomhaven? Like,
yeah.
so yeah, probably is a good idea for the 12 people listening to this. Jump on board the Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we will most likely do, Gaz, is that when you guys come over, we'll bang through like 2.0, Gloomhaven 2.0, and then do a quick mental reset, and then try to juggle into a scenario of Rove, and then record 2 episodes of the podcast later in the week. Try not to intermingle the details, and try to keep everything as professional and separate as possible. Yes, I think we can do that.
Yeah, that sounds easy. I mean, we'll talk about it. Let's have a look. That sounds really interesting. I'd be super keen to have a look at it because it sounds very different. I'm always keen to see how since playing Gloomhaven, I've always been interested to go, what are the other ways you could do monster AI really well, monster cards well, character class progression, that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
scenarios and events and all that. Because we've only got Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, kind of again for me as the kind of standard, and I think they do an amazing job at it. As much as we bitch and complain about bits and pieces, it's nitpicking. But I'm fascinated to see how someone else does it, and especially from pretty well renowned kind of group of people based on their previous output, right?
Yes.
Like that's it. Like it's not like someone just came up with an idea and said, "What about?" It's
No,
like,
they've proven themselves,
yeah,
with something that wasn't even mass market and not even, I don't even believe it was crowdfunded. Like, for all I know, it might have been. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole of working out its origin story, but
mm,
yeah, they've done exceptionally well with their ideas and putting it all out and
mm.
making it happen.
So yeah, so you said a couple of days left.
Couple of days left. As
Ugh.
of it's like 6 from this recording day, but from the release of this episode,
Oh, so 2 days left from the future.
kind of, yeah.
Oh, okay. I like this. Okay,
That's
cool.
right.
What else is happening in the future?
Nothing.
Like what's
Oh,
just
oh,
happened?
sorry. Yes, in the future, shipping for this game, if you live in Australia, or
Oh,
it's not too bad, but if you live in New Zealand, it's pretty bad. So yeah, just
but they're from New Zealand.
have a look at the chart. I think you're just adding that and making that up.
Ah, it's so bad. You got to look after your own people.
Okay, I'm not sure they're there. They might be. If they are
Yeah,
there, then yes, it's a
but
problem.
shipping anything to Australia and New Zealand is the worst. I don't know about shipping costs to New Zealand, but it's bad enough getting things here. We may as well be on the moon. In fact, I reckon it's probably the same price.
Shipping to the moon?
I want to say if you put moon as a location for shipping for Rove, if it goes up any higher than it does for
Probably
Australia
won't.
slash New Zealand.
No.
There's probably more shuttles going via the moon than there are ships going via Australia on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll record up there once and just let everyone know what it's like.
No one will even know.
No. Finally, the last thing I'm going to say before we jump in is very quickly, and I just spoke to him. Dwarf has just done a little side project as well. I may have mentioned last time that we were doing a job posting and I couldn't remember why we were there. And this is something that we've brought up. It's something that other people have brought up. It's quite big in the community where people get overwhelmed with the amount of quests that there are and you're running back and forth because of time-gated scenarios, etc. So Dwarf is actually putting together a document which actually is almost like a previously on Frosthaven, and you can go to the scenario and work out why you're there. And
Yeah.
it kind of helps cover back some of those section events in the section book and all of that. It just helps to keep you up to date and keep the party up to date so that you don't feel lost when you're
Yep.
playing it and going, why do we care? So it's a big project that he's doing. But so far everyone's been very excited for this, especially if they're fairly early on in their campaign. And no, it's a lot of work because he's got to basically go through just heaps of text and then find a way to condense it in a
Mm.
in a way we can understand. But you know,
And I mean, The thing is as well, like the fact that he's got the time to spend on this because he has his family and his life and he does all these things. This is a hobby for him. Clearly, there's not enough questions about how to play above 4-player Frosthaven coming to him. Like or battle goal questions, right?
Mm,
So I really feel like the community has let us down on this one.
slacked off a little bit.
Yeah, like if Dwarf has enough time for these kind of projects, people aren't harassing him enough. So
No, we need him to complete this, and then he can go
okay,
back to
so hold off
asking
the
about.
harassment just for another couple of weeks,
That's
right?
right.
And then you can unload.
Absolutely. So, with that out of the way, on today's
15
episode, we
into
will be covering what did you say?
15 minutes in, we're like, all right, now Frosthaven,
25,
right?
but yes.
Oh, sorry, people.
Scenario 100 inside the swarm, which I actually didn't remember the name of this until I guess looked it up. And then we're going to have a little chat about experience, the other morale. Not really. It's a bit of a bait and switch. You're not meant to give that away, are you? You're not meant to.
You
Yeah,
don't
okay.
tell people it's a bait and switch. Like, it's like, hey, Daddy, check out this swindle, right?
Yes. All right, cool. So we had our road event going into it. It was winter road event number 12. What actually happened? And I'm not going to waste time asking you this time.
I do actually
Oh, okay.
don't remember, but I remember you saying something about it.
Oh, guys, don't be a time waster
Sorry.
that Collingwood player. Um, so what actually ultimately happened was we actually came up to, I believe, I don't know, something needed the charge core.
Oh, a
So-
door. Yes, because it was a
Yes.
door like the other door, and you were like, "Oh, we keep finding doors."
Yeah, we keep finding doors,
Yeah.
and we also recharged our charged core, and we're like, is there more events that are going to use this?
Mm.
And sure enough,
The
there
answer is
was.
yes.
The answer is yes, and yeah, we got to apply it to a door's receptacle, and we got an item, and
Is
the
this
item is
the?
good.
Oh, this is the best item. This solves all of our problems. Just
It's also,
literally,
but it's also really good in our party.
just this solves. This is just like the cure to all of our complaints about our buckets. Are we allowed to talk about the item?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Oh, it's like a wand of just absolutely book your morale and get really cool shit out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
The
our bucket will
consuming.
never be full again.
You have to consume morale as a
Morale.
resource.
Like, this is insane. This is like what we've been asking for. Like, I'm actually good on a morale reward now for quests. Like, bring it on. Yes, morale is the best reward because it means we just get more blesses.
Yep. So we finally found something to take it down, provided we use it, which we definitely will. And then we headed over to scenario 100. So after breaking into prison, I believe we broke into a prison.
Yeah.
And we helped a slow as hell orchid named Gem retrieve her box of bugs. We headed into what she said was the Harrower hive mind, which sounds terrifying, to achieve something and complete a good thing for our overall happiness.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember why we went, but we just did.
We're going to go retrieve something that she says is important.
And it's good if we retrieve
Well,
it.
I mean, she's claiming that it's good. I feel like this whole thing isn't going to be good, but
And she will be pleased.
someone out there is like, it's like the whole argument, good versus evil, right? Like it's perspective.
And evil will not be pleased if we can accomplish this.
Well, I don't know. I mean, good might not be pleased if we accomplish this. It depends. Like, is that hashtag Empire did nothing wrong? Like,
Oh, okay.
like
That's
this could
pretty
be the
deep.
Empire, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, no more of that from you. You're a bad guy at heart.
I'm not Rebel Scum.
Yeah, I know. Okay, there we go. So the scenario goal for scenario 100, by the way, Into the Swarm was also designed by Alexander Theo Harris, who did 99, and I believe is going to be doing 101 and 102.
Which I'm pretty
which
excited
follow it.
about. Like, again, we've talked about the designers on and off through our whole thing, and like, I think we loved last week. Well, I did anyway. The design anyway of it, and
I like design.
like the design of this one was really cool. So again, it's kind of like the Fish King PQ quest, how we got the same designer for all of those, and they all felt really cool.
Yeah.
Like and I'm looking forward to the same designer kind of rolling through this lot.
It's a good point. So, scenario is complete when all enemies in it are dead and the gold treasure tile has been looted. At the end of that round, we read a thing, which is the exact same goal as the last scenario we did. Scenario effect, all people named Gaz add 2 -1s to their AMD because the other
Because
3
fuck
are
you, guys.
ignoring it. Scenario effects, which is really amusing. All right, so special rules. Place each character's entire pool of available ability cards, not just their hand size, into a set-aside deck next to their character mat. Each character then selects any 2 of these cards to form their starting hand. Whenever any character rests or would lose a card to negate damage, instead of losing a card, they add any one set-aside card to their hand. In addition, whenever any character plays a lost action, instead of losing the card, they discard it and also add any one set-aside card to their hand. All recovery-based actions still place the card in the character's lost pile as normal. I think that's what that symbol means. All abilities that recover lost cards instead move cards from a character's discard pile to their set-aside deck. If any character would add another set-aside card to their hand while at their maximum hand size, and this includes cards in their hand, active area, lost pile, and discard pile, they become exhausted. Is there a TLDR for that, Gaz?
I think so. We took a while to get our heads around it, even though it seemed basic. But the idea is that all of the cards you have the option of selecting when you pick your starting hand, right? They all go into a pile. At the start, you pick 2, any 2. And then anytime you rest, play a lost card, you draw another one, right? So then your hand goes to 3 and then goes to 4 and goes to 5, etc., etc. You still play the same way as in cards go into your discard pile as normal, right? And when you don't have enough cards to play, you have to rest, right? But what that essentially means as you play through is turn 1, you'll have 2 cards, you'll play them both. They both go into your discard pile, right? Then you have no cards, you need to rest, which means you get those 2 back because you're not burning any cards or losing any cards when you rest, but you're gaining 1. So your next turn, you start with 3. Right. And then you go through that process. So it's pretty simple once you've done 1 round of it. Right. The only thing that was weird was how do lost cards and or persistent cards interact with it. And they're doubly shit because, for example, when you play a pet, which is a lost card, it goes out. A lost card means you have to draw 1 right away. Right. But that pet can die. Which is great because it goes into your discard pile, so you can play it again. But now you're playing it again and drawing another card. So again, like your burn cards are gonna exhaust you really quickly because you're gonna end up with lots of cards in your hand.
That's right. It's like a reverse stamina system, and it makes sense once you're doing it, but it really messes with your head a little bit.
Yeah.
Which was definitely fun. Challenge cards, we had pack hunting. This is one of 2 we have left. We decided to go with pack hunting, which is at the start of the 3rd round, we're going to spawn normal hounds. 1 for each player. Very exciting. We had Weedy the Ruin Machine, which is the one that all characters will gain shield 1 as our first pet. Our second pet, we had What Dog the Black Imp, which all characters in initiative order will perform an attack 2. Monster combinations, we have Burrowing Blades, Earth Demons, Lurker Mind Snipper, and Shrike Fiends. The weirdest combination. I can't really understand it, but sure. And actually a couple in there that we haven't seen in a while, so it's pretty exciting. Our party is me on a level 4 Astral, Gaz on a level 7 Prism, Mark on a level 4 Kelp, and Phil on a level 5 Drifter. First room setup, we had a small hex tile with 6 spawn locations for us to choose from. Very excited. So much flexibility. We had 2 obstacles and a trap near the soul door, and then Shrike Fiends and Mind Snippers. And ultimately, the very first thing says, when a door is opened, read a thing. What were your initial thoughts, Gaz?
I mean, the room seemed fine. Like there was a bunch of stuff to kill, but it was just getting your head around how this was going to play out. Like, so first impressions were, how do I make this mechanic not absolutely wreck me? And I was the more, I mean, that's probably what everyone was thinking. But then we're each individually thinking on based on our play style, right? Like these are the cards I need to get out. These are the cards I need. How am I going to navigate that? And so I guess initial thoughts on, and I'll kind of bleed into first turn because this kind of meant was
Yep.
the initial thoughts were the first turn, right? Is that normally you're looking at your hand that you've picked and you kind of go, well, I'm going to pick my best two optimal cards for this turn, maybe with an view forward to the next turn so I can kind of get some momentum going. The thing with this is that you're picking your starting hand, right, of two cards out of all your whole deck, basically. These are your cards you're going to be playing and have access to for the remainder of the scenario.
Mm.
So if you pick a really niche card that has a really good turn one, but probably isn't that useful for the rest of the turns, the rest of the scenario, you're now stuck with that card and it's kind of something you can't really get rid of.
Yep.
So initial thoughts were, how do I pick right, but also still be able to do something, right? Not just pick two cards and just do whatever, like, because they'll be good later. It was kind of do something now and also be good later.
Because you're used to having access to everything immediately and then going through it. This, you're selecting the first two. And even that next choice of, I mean, obviously you need to rest. On the very first turn, after you've done everything, you're probably going to short rest. Short resting is advantageous in a way because you get to choose a card and still get another turn immediately. So whatever card you pick, you know you're going to be able to have immediate access to. But there were times that I was looking at, especially that first room, it's kind of like, okay, cool. I know I've got my first turn finally sorted out. And there was a lot of thinking that went involved with this for all of us as we're trying to wrap our heads around this. But once that first one's done, everyone's doing their rest, it's kind of like, cool. Oh, I'm going to grab this because I need to get this out. But I need other cards in my exact situation. I need other cards to create the elements to get this out. Huh. This is extra annoying for me. And you've got this whole other system where you don't want to have too many bots out, you know, because
Well, yeah, so that's where and the joke at the start about me choking myself and dying, like kind of was I started with a robot. So without going into the mechanics of the prison, but basically I start with a summon card out, but without the summon on the board, and that's my form. So I started one which grants all of my attacks have poison. So I find at the start it's a really good one because then I can kind of throw a bunch of attacks out, get some poison out, and kind of while people start burning them down, I can then start building my robot army. The problem, the downside is because I've always got a downside is that I can't be healed by anything. My HP value can never increase via healing. Now, normally it's not a problem because usually on turn two or three I can transfer out because I'll usually have played another bot. The problem was I did not think about that ahead, but that meant I needed to choose a bot from my rest cycle, right? And then play it and then transfer out. But with two cards and then three cards, that's not happening anytime soon, right? Because yeah, it just became this really weird situation of choosing the wrong cards and going like, shit, I have to need to choose that. And then I also need to choose that. And so I was kind of stuck. And I'm like, I could have chosen worse. Right. So there is one that does damage to me every turn. And it boosts my damage. If I chosen that, I would have been in a lot of trouble. But yeah, it basically just came down to the fact that I picking a card meant I was stuck with that card for the whole scenario. So I needed to make sure that it was something that I actually wanted to play.
yeah,
So yeah, it was interesting. Very interesting.
very interesting. Um, so another thing that I'll quickly mention at the very start of this is that at the very end of last session, we had a section event that led to two volunteers going forward, and Mark on the kelp and I volunteered, and it ended up being a swapping health situation. So Mark actually suffered 6 damage at the start of the actual turn to increase my max health by 6, which was really handy, especially because I was, giving everyone the impression that I was gonna tank. So, it's important to give the tank more health,
Yep.
which is pretty cool. So, standard first room, we had a lot of we had two Shrike Fiends and we had two Mind Snippers, and everyone's splitting up, I guess, their damage. And you've got Kelp, and you've got the Drifter doing a whole bunch of stuff. You've got Gaz, who was choking himself, but only because he couldn't actually heal himself. And I actually now remember saying, "Hey, I can heal two targets. I heal myself," and Gaz was like, "No," and I was like, "What?"
What do you mean no? I was
Y-
like, I can't be healed.
But you
So
need it. I don't
yeah, I
understand.
do. I do. I know that number there is getting really low, but I can't have it. Sorry.
I opened with the HP increase curse immunity infusion for a change, which was nice so that I could get my sword out on level 2 at round 2. Gaz helped me get that infusion out at the beginning with a nice element potion. So I'm liking that he's helping me at for turn 1 and, getting the tempo sorted out, which is pretty cool. Mind Snippers, Gaz made a comment during the session that, oh, we put these guys in the bin, and I can't actually remember where we did put them, but we definitely don't respect them as much as I think other groups might.
And I
Uh,
think that comment's been made a couple of times. I think the first time we almost did put them right in the bin. People were like, "Whoa!" And then the next time, I think we'd seen them do something, so we didn't put them in the bin, but they were like, "Meh." And I think again the reaction was like, "Are you guys serious? Like these things are brutal." And we're like, we haven't seen it."
they were a bit more brutal this time. The pierce attacks that they do, I mean, obviously the AMD was helping them, but they were hitting pretty hard. And Phil and I both have plate armor, which made no difference whatsoever. So we felt a lot of the two target hits that they started to do. But, it wasn't like a massive deal, but it was definitely leveling, like lifting them a little bit higher up on
Mm.
the. They could be scary. They did do throughout the scenario, their mind control thing that we were always well positioned for.
Yeah.
Luckily, because we've yet to be on the receiving end of one of those, which that'd be pretty funny. Like,
Well, if they mind control Phil, that basically means one of us is getting crit, right?
I forget whether or not it uses his AMD, and would it
Yeah,
use
we
his
always.
crushing weight? I don't know.
Oh yeah, it would, wouldn't it? I don't
I don't
know.
know.
They
We
perform an
don't let it
attack.
happen.
Yeah, who knows? All right.
And then turn 3, the wolves spawn. So we get rid of all the mind snippers. We still have 2 Shrike Fiends on the board because they have a lot more health, and all the wolves spawn. And my sword is out at this stage. And there was a really, really weird experience or thing that happened. Now, I didn't have the greatest sword experience last week, and I went into a bit of detail at the end of the episode. This time I felt like I'd already buffed the health up, I'd gotten it out, and I was very excited to, get this to work. In fact, another card I managed to get out was the I don't remember if it was in this room or later, but my infusion setup was the Retaliate one, because, I was gonna potentially tank with a bit of Retaliate, and also the Wound Muddle, which I was hoping my sword was going to start doing a bit of wound muddling around the room. And I actually have a photo, which I'll throw up on the actual episode editing thing, of the exact situation we were in. And you can see in this picture where Gaz is situated, which is, he's got a wolf there that he says, no, I'll leave it alone or whatever, because I think Phil had some focusing issue or he wanted to jump over and he couldn't do it if the wolf was dead. I can't remember what it was. Because the Shrike thing was pulling, so it'll pull you to where the
That
wolf
was
was.
after everything was dead. It was all over by that stage. Like this
Uh,
whole bad situation had already happened by that point.
right. So ultimately, what happened was Phil, with his crushing weight, decided to unload a burn card on all of the wolves and kind of made it look like he wasn't intending to kill them all, even though he had crushing weight for it and they're normal.
I think he
Proceeded.
also drew like a +1, a +2, and a crit.
Yeah,
And they were
a plus or
poisoned.
something. Yeah. And
So, yeah, there was and that wasn't his fault. I poisoned them because I was like, "There's 3 of them spawning. I'm gonna attack 2 targets. I'll help us out, right? Because putting poison on these things that have retaliate is helpful." I didn't realize that he was just going to go, like, Kamehameha and destroy all 3 of them in one go.
and he destroyed all 3 of them in one go.
Yeah.
He went at like a 19 and I went at like a 20. Then it was
Yeah,
my
you were 1
turn.
yeah, no, it was 1 off. Yeah, it was. I remember looking at that going, like, because it was like, "Oh, 1 initiative difference, and that changes everything."
Yeah, so it was my turn. And as we know, pets go before their owners. So my sword, Claymore, which was about to start hitting a couple of wolves, was like, well, there's no wolves left. And the other Shrike Fin in the back is gone. So there's the one next to the trap on the other side of the trap. And because my sword is a sword that does this,
Orcs.
it walks. It walked right into the trap and died.
Yeah,
And I was just like, yo,
yeah.
this is cool. And it's 100%. I know it was nothing to do with me, but it was very hard to at the time not sit there and go, why am I so shit at this? But the sword, which I did name Cassandra,
Uh,
wandered into a trap, which was great because it cleared the trap, so we didn't have to. And then yeah, back to making the earth to get the sword back out again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So we basically deal with the rest of the remaining Shrike Fiends, and I'm sitting there looting and trying to get my elements up so I can get my sword out again. And while this is all happening, I'm pretty sure Mark was asking who was going to open the door, and I think another round went past, and I think Mark cracked the shits and went and opened the door because we were all piss farting around, and I was too busy trying to get Cassandra back up again.
In our defense, you were trying to get your weapon out. I think I was long resting, and Phil was like, "I'm gonna move closer to the door," and like then Mark come back, like, "Why'd no one open the door?" I was like, "I don't. No one was planning on opening the door." Like, because I think the problem was that he had a teleport.
Yeah,
So
okay.
he just wanted to teleport into the room. He didn't want to have to walk through the door like a
Like a
normie,
normal
right?
person.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, no, I don't use my legs. What are you talking about? I'm gonna go through the wall. So yeah, he did. He cracked it. He's like, fine, I'll just open the door and stand in the doorway.
Yep. And we get a nice L-shaped corridor. There's traps, difficult terrain, mine snippers, burrowing blades. Haven't seen these in a while. Door at the end. And the section says once that door's open, we read the next part. So it's another room clearing kind of thing. Before we can analyze the actual situation in this room and work out what we want to do, everything basically heads towards the door, and the burrowing blades do their focus furthest and basically end up in the first room with us. And this is the part that I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because it's right there. And Cassandra's next to me, and I'm here. And Cassandra's like, oh, finally I can do something. And goes to have a swing. And elite burrowing blades at this level have 3 shield. And Cassandra hits on a 3. Or she hits for 3. And drew a +0, which muddled it and wounded it, which is pretty cool. So that's so far probably like last session, yes, Cassandra killed 2 things by accident. But this game, she's done that, which is pretty cool. And then Gaz comes in and does his poison on them, and then you start dealing with them while the other 2 guys, Angry Door Guy and Phil, jump inside to deal with the Mind Snippers, and they get absolutely booked. Not so much Mark, he gets booked a little bit, but Phil gets wrecked in this room, absolutely wrecked because of the Mind Snipping Pierce once again. And I've got a picture of our ex-Haven where he's in there on 1 health because he was cutting it fine. And it was around this time I realized I'm not really doing my job. But also, I can't get in there because one of the burrowing blades, the normal one, is blocking the doorway. So, which seems to be a theme for this
Yeah.
particular scenario. So we eventually, we do eventually clear this. I don't think anything of note happens from here. Oh.
You did miss one thing.
Oh. Was
To
it
add
me?
more frustration. I think there's some frustration that it just again another straw on top of your already
Yeah. Give it to me.
very
Remind me, because
fragile back.
I've cleansed my brain of it.
Once the burrowing blades jumped in,
Mm-hmm.
the next turn, when they were surrounding you and Cassandra,
Yeah.
they did a pure damage, just attack, hit everyone. Not an attack. It just hit everyone around you.
Oh, yeah.
So like you have this
The
retaliate
retaliate.
and
Yeah,
volition,
yeah, yeah.
and then they went like, "Oh, we're not attacking this time. We're just
No.
going to do damage to people next to us."
Yeah.
And you were like, "Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Yeah."
right.
So not only does my shields not protect me, they don't get retaliated on, and we just take a bunch of damage.
Yeah. And Cassandra has 5 health, so she went down to 1 because she took 2
Yeah.
instances of this. And I
Yeah.
was just like, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
this is the way it is. It's
Yeah.
ret life, even though I wasn't really having a big ret turn, but this is just the way it is. Shrike Fiends also have cards that just go, all of you just take damage. We can't be bothered attacking you. Just take damage.
Birds. Just go over there, birds.
Now, as we do clear this room and head towards the other part, Mark does make a comment about the traps. And he was like, I'll eat a trap. And we're like, no, we can get through difficult terrain. Mark does still eat a trap. And he negates it by drawing a card, which was pretty cool. I actually rate that. That was actually an interesting way of
Getting more cards.
yeah, playing around the special rules.
And
which
the
I thought was
reason, just
interesting.
again, for a reminder, the reason why that works is that anytime you would lose a card, like for example, negating damage by losing a card, you can do that. But instead of losing a card, you just draw a card.
Exactly, which is kind of cool if you need a card like immediately for another round or something, I guess.
Yeah.
Now we have a little chat about how deep this place might be, and where are we at regarding cards? Because it's a bit of a going in the reverse this way. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm at 8 cards or I'm at 9 cards. What's your hand limit? 11. So oh yeah, but you're factoring in the rounds of when you have 11 at your hand limit. You don't want to go over, which all of a sudden means like at the end of a scenario, burning cards, right? Burning cards normally, but you kind of can't do that in here because you will just insta exhaust as soon as you go above that limit, right?
Yeah.
And things are getting a little scary. Now, Phil has also learned that crushing weight, when it falls off, he can just put it back on again.
Yeah, this is the greatest scenario for him, right? His one weakness of not managing his DJ decks is no longer a problem because it's like, oh, it fell off. I'll just put it back on.
Yeah. And I don't know which level card it is. I can't remember, but it's got that pyramid cleave thing he does, which is also a lost card, right? So
Correct.
he's
Yep.
doing both a lot. And the
I'm
person
pretty
with
sure
the
that's like
biggest.
literally all he did, right? Was he's just put crushing weight up, did his AoE, did his AoE, did his AoE, did
And
his
it
AoE. Oh,
worked.
crushing weight fell off. I better put that back up and hey, I'll just do my AoE.
And it 100% worked. It was just very expensive
Mm,
because he was basically very close to exhausting. Even though he has the largest hand limit of
yeah.
12, he was flying to that goal of, you know, exhausting ultimately. But the last room we open, and it's a giant room with 3 tiles interconnecting. 3 types of mobs. The ones that are littered through the scenario are in here. They're spread out around the map. Obstacles are littered around gold treasure tile in the center, etc. And I can't remember who opened the door, but I was on my way in, and I think you were on your way in, but we were stuck on the hallway, and Cassandra was on her way in. Mark is teleported into the door and doing invisible shenanigans. Kelp is really survivable when he
You can hit
plans it
it
properly. Pardon?
when nothing can hit you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Phil also has a big move jump thing that goes in and started doing his crushing weight cleaving thing because everything in this room rather quickly made its way over to the door. And awkwardly kind of didn't give Gaz and I much room in terms of entering, let alone Cassandra. Getting in the right position as well. So it was a real awkward kind of situation where we're trying to work out who can go where and everything. All whilst Phil is giving us the heads up that he's almost out, and Mark is making plans. Oh, I can't remember what he said. He was preventing me from doing something because he wanted to go somewhere, and then I agreed to it, and then he was immobilized the whole time, and he couldn't actually get there or something. And
It was the
you know,
retaliate. The thing was going to attack
oh
like your sword
yes,
or you and
I
I.
always
He's
got
like,
a good retaliate turn off. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but he's like, no, no, don't make it do this instead. And was like, okay. And he's like, I'll kill it. And then he's like, okay. And then things spawned and moved. And he's like, I can't kill it anymore. And it's like, oh, okay. I think he still end up killing it because he played his stupid card.
Yeah.
But it was funny for a moment there that the Mind Snipper on 1 health wasn't going to die. It's like,
No.
we could have just killed it when it did the attack and the retaliate, right? Like yeah. Anyway,
Phil goes ham, he exhausts. Mark is stabbing heaps of things, and you and I are talking about how to get into the actual room. So I believe you go in, and then I'm all of a sudden, just based on the spatial puzzle of where everything is, the mind snipper that I believe may have been on 1 health, or might have been the different one, decided to do a 2 attack pierce attack. And the only 2 targets was, I believe, me and Cassandra. And then he hit Cassandra for 5.
mm-hmm.
And Cassandra hadn't even made it into the room yet.
Mm-hmm.
And my sword just blew up again.
Yep.
And I think that was the part where I just kind of was like, fuck this. I'm over this. I went straight into status mode which I was doing anyway. Disarm this, brittle that, disarm this, heal this, brittle that. But I was really kind of in a bad mood with Cassandra.
Yeah.
But due to the efforts of everyone, this room, which did look very problematic, was handled quite nicely, especially from those the 2 DPS boys.
We did get to put a card back from our hand back into our
Oh
pile
yeah,
when
for
we opened
activating
the
the
last
room.
door. So that kind of gave us a little bit of stand back. So
It's true. And yeah, I actually wrote down in capital letters. I've only just gotten up to it. Fuck the sword. Is what I've written.
the funny one with that one though at the end was that we had the option of it not targeting the sword, right? It was optional, and you were like, no, it's fine. And I think because we all just didn't click that they were attacking with Pierce, right? And they did draw high, but if it hadn't had Pierce, it would have survived. It was just that little bit more that pushed it across the line, and we're like, this can attack you, right? Like that was the original option, is attack you. And like, no, I'll put it on the sword, and then put it on the sword, and then the sword died because it had pierce. And like, okay. And then you're like, no, fuck it, doesn't matter. It's like, but
I'm
I think
so
it's
fucking
like
done.
if that was the first one, it would have been fine. But it was like the third instance of like just this, bad luck.
Yep. So we get close to the hand limit. Mark and Gaz play cleanup. Phil's definitely long gone by now.
Hmm.
I go into control mode, like I said, with statuses and brittles and disarms and everything. Like we get the gold tile. Gaz gets the treasure tile, which was really nice, wasn't it? On
I mean,
you.
it was a great reward, but just the worst person to get it on, right?
Yeah, 10 XP to Gaz,
Mm.
who's
Getting
retiring
close to
sometime
level 9.
soonish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do complete the scenario.
Yep.
So our rewards were we gained 5 gold and 10 XP each, which is very welcomed and very nice. Everyone's very happy with that. And then a bunch of flavor narration, which I'm waiting for Dwarf to catch up on, so I can work out what happened. But basically, I think we're making a Harrower, or Gem is making one, or something.
I think we rescued one. I think there's a my summary of it from what I heard and read, and I kind of maybe I'm just this is what I think should happen, and I'm just kind of imposing it. But it sounds like this gem is going through and like putting the band back together, but of like baddies. Like
I'm sensing Gem is not good.
that's what I'm like, because there was a whole piece of dialogue when they rescued the Harrow at the end, which was in the box that we did, and the Harrow was basically like, oh no, but I'm supposed to be in here for like the rest of our lives, and Jim's like, it's the rest of everyone else's life, it's fine, right? Like, so I feel like there's a morality thing going on here, like yeah, but it seems cool. Like I'm really into this story, this kind of story arc. Like I think
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
it
go back
feels
and
really
reread it.
cool. I've liked the two scenarios so far from a design perspective. I know we'll talk a bit more about this one in a minute. So I don't know, I'm kind of on board with this. It's it seems cool.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the scenario?
Yeah, look, I didn't have the most fun. I got stuck a lot. I made bad choices. It's a difficult party to do. It's a difficult party at the moment to set up and do stuff with because everything's dying so quickly. So it's tricky to maneuver stuff. And I also didn't go for a lots of robots build because I thought I was just going to exhaust really quickly. Um, so me particular, like as in my experience wasn't the best. But I
I'm
think
with
that
you
was
on
more
that, by the
character
way.
based. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I thought the design of it was amazing. I
Very good.
really liked the way that it was planned out. I loved the opposite mechanic that was actually
Mm.
quite easy once you got it. Like here's a big chunk of text. It was kind of like the platforms in the last one. Okay, it's gonna read it 2 or 3 times to make sure we've got it. But once you've got it, we've got it,
Yeah.
right? And then it's clean. Um, so that was really cool. And again, it's a kill all with a loot at the end, but it didn't feel like a kill all. Like
No.
it felt like you've got to get through this and you've got to deal with all these different mechanics and these pretty crazy monster types. And once you do that, you're going to be done. But that didn't just feel like a like tank and spank type thing.
Mm.
Like go in there and kill everything and then you're done. Really did feel like we were up against it. So yeah, I think again it was a really well designed, smaller scenario.
I wonder where a lot of people would sit on this in that regard as a kill all with a gold tile, which is what everyone's always wanting, especially the Gloomhaven crew. But obviously, the special rules are there to just put a lot of it on its head
Mm.
and change the way you think about it. It's still kill all, right? It's not like endless spawns. It's not like
Mm.
other crazy pressure plate puzzles. It's
But
just a different look at the standard Gloomhaven puzzle.
yeah, and that's it. And I think that's exactly it. I've banged on about this enough, but like the idea that you you're just playing a character. Like the puzzle is the monster types, the scenario, your character, put it all in there with some flavor. Like, yeah, your cards are backwards, but your cards still do exactly what they say.
Yeah,
It's just you're gaining them in a different way. Your hand is created in a different way, which adds a different puzzle, but it's not restricting you, right?
yeah,
So again, I think it's a great way of limiting someone,
yeah.
right? Without permanent muddle or negative to attacks and moves and stuff like that. It's like make it harder
Yeah.
for you to do what you want to do, but you still have complete agency over it.
Yeah. I
So
think I agree with you. I think this is a very cool scenario. It's got one of the coolest mechanics that we've encountered. It reminds me a little bit of scenario 120, and that was the stab yourself one where you have a set aside deck, but you're drawing from it like 3 cards, and you've got to
yeah,
make a play from it, and it's random. I encourage more of this, like not like heaps, because obviously the game would be a bit, you'd get a bit over it after a bit, but this is the second time we've really seen something really impact the deck. And what made this cool is that you literally don't have to set your hand at the start. You bring every card that you have
yeah,
access to, and you can literally build the deck as you're playing it,
yeah,
which is so unique.
yeah.
But yeah, I
And
think
you
this
still scroll,
was,
and you're still flicking through the cards that you never take on any scenario ever, going, "Ooh, I wonder if I'll pick this
yeah,
one." No, I'm not going to pick that. It's crap.
yeah,
Yeah.
there.
Um, it's funny because this is the third that I think we've done that have messed with how your hand is kind of maintained, right? We had the stab yourself one, we had the deep terror one that took your cards until you killed the
Oh
throne,
yeah,
right? And now we've had this one, and all three of these have felt they've all gone with a your mind is all like kind of messed up, right? Like things are invading it. And it's felt like that because you really do, you go, "Well, I don't have control over where my cards are, but I still just gotta figure out how I can get them, and
yeah,
then I can do what I want." This is what not to I don't want to just going, put the boots into an old scenario that I already said I didn't like, but the last one that we did where, Moonshard or whatever her name was going through and we got the negatives, that was one that has probably out of all of them talked about how messed up your mind is and how much of a drag of it was, but it didn't wanna do anything like this, and
no,
that's what's so fascinating because those other 3 that have been in this madness state have felt really cool.
yeah,
Like, the throne one was really hard, right? The stab yourself one was interesting and tricky because we made it tricky, and this one was fun for different reasons, but that's like the other one just I feel like a mechanic like this would've just made all that better.
yeah.
So yeah, I've really liked the 3 out of the 4, your mind has gone all messy. Yeah,
Well,
like how you
this
gonna solve that puzzle.
this little quest chain, if you could call it that, this is the second one, and I think I can't remember if there's 3, 4, or 5, but
Mm,
this is the second one. Like, you can't go backwards after this. You
nah.
can't go play it too safe, right? You need
I
to
mean,
see
you
where
need
Alexander's going to evolve it a little
you
bit,
probably need a
surely.
lull. I reckon there needs to be a lull.
It has to be a spicy lull. That you can't go
Yeah.
full boring vanilla lull.
No, you can't go boring vanilla lull, but you can't just keep jumping the shark, right?
I don't know.
Like,
I'm still praying for one where it's kind of like you set aside deck, but grab 3 cards and pass them to the player on your left, and they have to pick one. I'm still waiting for one where everyone just starts using cards from each other's deck, and you get some real stupid, insane kind of things. There
ability
has to be one
draft,
in here.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or randomly deal out 4 cards and hand them to the person next to you, they choose 2,
yeah.
right?
That'd be so cool. And
But
then
you can't
you'll take
talk.
Cassandra off me, and then next minute you're spawning her, and she's running around
Yeah.
cleaving everything, and I'm just like, are you fucking serious right now?
But yeah, but we'll go Hanabi rules, right? You can't talk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
Love that.
yeah. So yeah. I again, much like when we went through the Fish King PQ thing, I was always interested to see just what the next scenario would be, and I
Mm,
think they all delivered from a oh that's really cool, that's really interesting. Experience on some of them was higher and lower, but that's kind of a your mileage may vary depending on your character, your class, your makeup, just how you play, etc., etc. Um, but yeah, I'm really keen to see where this goes, both storyline wise and design wise. So
I assume we're doing the next one then, because I don't believe they're locked out.
I'd like to, unless anyone. I don't think we have unlocked anything. If we have unlocked anything that's going to drive us forward, then we do that.
Yeah,
If we don't, then I would still vote for just doing the next one in this chain. Yeah,
totally. At least we can stay consistent with the story as well.
we might remember it.
It's true. So what did Mark think? Mark said another great kill all with a twist. But oh, what a twist. I think the first hour or so had us wrapping our brain around the special rules, but once you had a few turns and played out the first few cycles, it was refreshingly easy to comprehend with minimal admin. Now, Mark was first hour of playing this was in the kitchen cooking our dinner, most of it. So I don't know whether or not he had to rap as much as we did. Hence why he came back and cracked the shits, but no one opened the door.
I
Um,
gave you guys one job and you couldn't even open the door.
that's right. He continues, just like last week, this scenario set up all classes to shine.
I mean, all kelp classes.
He wasn't there, Gaz. He didn't see everything. Phil was just cleaving everything while he was gone. Enough movement to make meaningful decisions and good monsters that threw out a decent challenge. A refreshing twist on rules. What will they think of next? And Phil said, the scenario was okay, but the special rules made it memorable in a yuck way.
I thought he was only supposed to give us 2 words.
Well, this was worthy of 11 words, I think,
Okay.
or 14. I've written down, like, is this normie scenario? And I actually have no idea anymore.
I mean, it's pretty linear. Linear. Like
There's
the
every
only.
mob in here, with the exception of Earth Demons, are pretty dangerous to, like,
Yeah, that's true.
that's all.
Yeah, the first room. It's going to be the first room, and then blocking the burrowing blades from getting in there. Like that's what it's going to be. So it's not a great one, but it's not the worst one.
I can just see a parallel universe where we did bring him along, like we got him and he came in here, and the Mind Snippers hit him, he survives, turns around and books my sword.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let us. I'll quickly do battle goals. I'll do battle goals and I'll have DPS meters up on the screen. So we had bully. Kill an enemy that has 2 or more negative conditions.
Hey, that was me. I had to pull in a few favors to do that one, but we got that.
Yeah, you did. How did
Thanks,
that go
Watchdog.
again? Oh, what's up? That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, guys, I need this wolf to be on slightly less HP than it's on now, but not dead. And it can't be on too much less because then I'll kill it, and I don't want to kill it. I want to kill it on my second attack. Like, there was a lot of conditions and hoops I had to jump through to do this one, but I got it.
Because of the pet. Like, we blew a pet for your BG,
Yeah,
basically.
basically, yeah.
Hunter, kill 1 or more elite enemies, or 2 or more for 4 characters. That was Phil.
Oh, yeah.
He achieved that several times. Sadist, kill 5 or more enemies. That was Mark. He says he did it. I mean, that's one where you have to track.
Yeah.
I assume he did it because I didn't kill anything. I don't know if you did either, apart from that wolf. And then we had Prepper. This was mine. This was the best one for me. Perform no attack abilities in the first 3 rounds. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Outpost phase, we had a Winter Outpost event 58. This was a very cool one, Outpost event, because it was based around, I believe, our stage. We put the stage up, and since then we've had a few different stage events that involve performances and Phil losing us prosperity and things like that. But we actually had to pick someone to have a speech, a motivational speech or whatever. And they had a choice of whether or not they wanted to talk about explaining a topic that they had mastered or tell a story from experience. And it was cool. We selected Gaz, and I can't remember. Did you pick the mastery one? And it was cool because it's based off kind of how your character's gone, which is why this event has popped up later. And we kind of meted it a little bit, as we do, when what does it mean, and then try to work away from whichever's going to give us morale, basically. But no.
But those are the kinds of scenario events that I think are really good. And they shouldn't all be like this, but I think more of them need to be in that you can work out. It's like a riddle in a sense, right? Like, and fully read into the language they've used on the card and see if you can work out about how you can make a choice based on that. And especially when there's multiple options.
Yeah.
So I think that works really well. And I don't know, this one would be a cool one if it was like goes back into the deck.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the fact that it's another one of those events that literally has in brackets, before you make a choice, select one character now, who will have to speak for the party. And it did get me thinking about events like this, but more so like everyone choose an option and then flip the card
Mm.
and then everyone resolves their section of whatever the option is.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think that it'd be cool if they had a couple of events like that where everyone can feel a little bit involved, but not the person who's making a decision for the group.
Mm.
Everyone's in charge of their own kind of event destiny, which I think would be cool.
I wonder if, and I want to go too much far down the rabbit hole because it'll go for too long, but I wonder if there's a world in which more events call for you to pick a character and then based on that character's, what are they, attributes, characteristics, what are they called? The three things.
Keywords.
Keywords, yeah. Based on that character's keywords, the thing resolves, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, so they need to be more descriptive with the event so that you could pick accurately. So you're not
Yeah.
just picking at random and hoping, because
Yeah.
then there's no point. But that would be interesting because then you're trying to solve the riddle and work out who has the pieces. Like, oh, okay, is this going to be resourceful or is it going to be educated, right?
Yeah.
Like those type of things.
No, I would love to see. This is already a better system than what we had in Gloomhaven by far.
Mm.
There's obviously another level it can go to. Not that there's anything wrong with this one, but it's just it'd be fascinating to see where they take this system.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think they
in the
will, right?
future.
Like then in next Haven, not including Gloomhaven 2.0, because I think that'll be more Gloomhaven with Frosthaven updates. Right, but I think in Next Haven, whatever the version they do after that, I do. I think like we talked about this with the resourcing. I think the events will go to the next level, the resources will go to the next level. Like everything will just go to the next evolution of what that is. Because I don't think that Isaac and that development team are going to want to just make the same game again.
No.
Like they brought Gloomhaven up to standard of Frosthaven so that people can play the whole experience, right? So when the question comes, do I play Gloomhaven or Frosthaven? Once 2.0 is out, you just go, we'll play Gloomhaven first,
Yeah.
right? It makes sense. But once the next one comes out, you're going to want it to be different again.
Well,
So,
I will kickstart them. Isaac team. I've got a great idea. So the next time, just chuck your writers $100. Just that should be enough, and get everyone in each envelope. Every what are they called? Like a class packet, the box where all the components are in. There's a little booklet in each one that's tied to that class. So when you do an event, and it's kind of like pick a character or whatever in the party. Let's go with me, for example, on the Astral, and in my little Astral event book, I turn to the section because everyone's got an identical section, but for their character, right? And then I can resolve it from the point of view of the Astral.
oh,
Now,
yeah, okay.
there's a lot of options there that will never, ever, ever be read. So there's a lot of work that has to go into it, but at least some of it should go around to every play group in the world, and everyone will
Yeah.
experience it a little differently.
Yeah, it's cool.
Dwarf can write it, make him do it.
Yep.
I've got a very quick snippet on just a couple of little Astral updates. Retaliate Infusion does appear fairly useless. I am wondering how much of it is just due to our party makeup, being that we've got two very fast and hard-hitting DPS at the moment, which I love. They're usually due to their movability, they're ahead,
Mm.
and running around and a little bit blink bladey from a movement point of view, meaning that I end up not taking a lot of hits. Whereas if I imagined an older party of Trap and Snowflake and things like that, I can see myself being more in the front
Yeah.
line just naturally. So I'm looking more into using the movement and jump. I'm going to experiment with that next scenario, yet still play a more tanky role. So I'm excited to continue the evolution of how it's going.
Mm.
Don't get me started on the sword. Dot dot dot. I will probably give Cassandra another go, but she's really losing a lot of value in my deck. Um, Going into more, movement, status application, I think it'll lead to a more consistent and feel good contribution overall. And the last thing is, I've currently got the boots that I thought would be good, and I'm glad that I've had to where I don't think it's going to work in this exact setup that we have, especially now that if I plan to move a little bit more. I've got the ones where if you move one, you get a shield, right? There's another one that I was tossing between, which is I believe you tap them, and when an adjacent teammate takes a hit, you can take it instead, which
Mm-hmm.
will probably keep the sword alive as well.
Oh, yeah, that's
Um,
true.
so yeah, and they're much cheaper as well. I don't know why I went for the expensive ones. So
Like
because
the thing is,
you
right, the
spend more,
ones
it's
you've
better.
got, yeah, the ones that you've got, the way that you've kind of also built the character in the last couple of scenarios, I think it just requires a bit more communication. Like, again, I go back to when I was playing the Banisphere. I needed people to be in certain places or me to be in certain places. So people were very open to that conversation because it was a requirement of my character. Right. And so,
Yeah.
again, as a great group, everyone's like, yeah, well, let's try and help Gaz so he can do some cool stuff as well. And that was awesome. I feel like not and maybe because you don't want to be like, hey, what are you doing? Can you please do this thing for me? But I think we just need to be a bit more conscious of the fact that you do have shields, you do have these boots, you do have this sword, you do have this retaliate, and we don't have a lot of heals. Like, I'm pretty self sufficient ish if I play my cards right, but I'd love to not have to heal myself because it means that I can not have to keep jumping in and out of my heal bot. Like, I don't think Mark has any heals. Phil barely heals at all. So we actually should be a lot more conscious about like funneling the damage in through to you. And I think maybe that just
Yeah.
means that we just need to be a bit more like, let's not jump to the end and just tank everything and try to kill everything and die. Or maybe we need to bump the difficulty up.
Well, I mean, we did have a chat at the end, and it was kind of like, look, it's been two very spicy, interesting scenarios for
Mm,
me. And we make all these jokes about what happened with the Claymore, with Cassandra and everything, because, it just really didn't even swing. Like, by the end of the scenario, I'd pulled like 3 cards out of my AMD, and that was about
mm,
it. But then I would be okay with that if it felt a little bit like you on the Coral when it was just in the middle and retaliating like absolutely nuts. But back then we had a different party makeup that involved a Snowflake, a Bone Shaper who's not at
mm.
the front, Petsu at the front, and then of course a Meteor who at the time was also front but also around, giving you full exposure. If
Yeah.
I'm not at the front, that's on me in a way. I'm not about to say everyone sit behind me and wait for them to come to me. It is actually on
Yeah.
me.
But I think that the difference is that people can play later cards. Like people are just playing early cards because they want to get on the DPS meters. If you're like, hey, I'm not doing a really big attack. Like if I go before you, I'm not going to kill everything, right? But what it means is I get to move one space, get my extra shield, things will focus me, and then we as a group have a better outcome. Then you can go and do your DPS.
This group
Like,
loves early initiatives. It's about beating each other to hit the hardest to go on the meters. Like,
well, yes, and I think there is a scale of for players who like that more than others. That's why I was more than happy to play a lot more supporty on the banner spear, right?
mm,
Like healing, playing with all that stuff because I know that I wasn't going to fight 3 other people for the limelight. But I think yeah, the build you're going needs us to coordinate a little bit more. Like, and I think we get a lot out of that without people having to restrict what they do. They just have to be more conscious of it, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go here and I'm going to take all these hits. Can people please let not go to 10 and jump next to me to do damage first and then they take all the hits? Like, it's just, yeah.
no, I see what you mean. I don't. Yeah, I'll give it a third week and just see how I'm going to tweak things out a little bit, just based on what I believe is good value, what is not. I'm not going to
Mm,
alter my complete play style and change and respec and all that kind of stuff. But I'm seeing this as a puzzle, and like we've said, every time someone starts a new character, they have a pretty average time trying to piece it all together. And it can be a few rough scenarios. And I had this with Shackles and I've had this with others. So, yeah, this is my teething moment. And I want to say I actually am enjoying it. I'm enjoying it now. At the time, not so much. And
mm,
straight after, not so much. But now, like, the motivation
thinking
kicks back
about it, yeah.
in. And now we're talking about it. And I'm like, yes, let's go, let's go, let's go. Um, so, experience.
Yep.
The concept. You brought this up with me and you said, you have a 10-page essay about experience.
No, no, no. I was talking to somebody and the conversation just went to experience and gaining experience, and I mentioned that you had trouble, not trouble, but you had more challenges gaining experience on your meteor than you did on some of the other characters, and that was more uh, like kind of highlighted by the fact that was your PQ as well.
Mm.
Otherwise, you don't really care as much, but you do, and so XP is one of the things that I think from the system, if I was to rank all of the things in Frosthaven slash Gloomhaven, because I'd say put them in the same bucket, all of the systems that I like, and I had to put them in an order from like the best that I like the most and down to the ones that I like the least.
Mm.
XP, the way XP works is probably close to the bottom for me. Now, that's not to say it's bad. Okay, and actually, the person I was talking to, Iron One, I'll call him out, right? He was just chatting to him, and he linked me an article, from forever ago when I think Isaac, like a blog post about Isaac talking about the XP system and how they evolved it, right? And it sounds like they've definitely landed from where they were landed on a more fun system now, right? So let's just clear out there. I'm not saying it's shit. I actually think it's fine, but where the conversation came up and what I wanted to have a quick chat about is that, like, does the way the XP system, because it's different for every single character and every single character plays different, has a different gimmick, has even different types of cards, which works for characters. But is it fair, and does every character level at the same rate, right?
Is it fair that they
And
don't? Is that what you mean?
yeah, correct, right? Like, because it doesn't seem like a kind of game to me where, oh, well, I mean, let's just use the media as an example versus, say, I don't know, the Bone Shaper seemed to level really quickly, right? And I don't know if they did, but just let's pretend that the Bone Shaper levels really quickly. If you go, okay, well, a level the meteor that can't doesn't need a level as fast because it's more powerful than the Bone Shaper. Like, a level 6 Bone Shaper is equivalent to a level 4 meteor. I don't think that's the case,
No.
where the different levels are a different power level from that perspective. So that would be a reason to limit XP. Um, and I haven't looked through all the character cards, so I don't know. But I'm just curious as your thoughts and the different characters you play. The XP system feel good with some characters and less good with others?
It's an interesting point. I have thought about that. It definitely feels good on some characters, or easy, effortless, basically. Like Drifter, your whole thing is moving the tokens, and every time you cross the threshold going forward, you get XP, which is great. And then you've got a couple of other cards that are tied to being in the right position or something along those lines. But the majority of them are based around, going over particular things. I have a sneaking suspicion, and I've only just thought about this now. A lot of the XP that's tied to a situation on the card is working in a way to teach you how to play the character better, I think. Which kind of blows my mind a little bit because it's like experience, right? Experience
Yeah,
in my own
true,
head.
true. Yeah.
Just because
Like,
of
you get experience and your character gets
yeah,
experience.
yeah,
Yeah,
because Hardened Spike and all the cards that I mentioned in the past with Melted Armor on the media, Hardened Spike, a lot of these cards are like do big hits, right? Hardened Spike does 5, but if they're on a hazardous terrain, you get +1 and you get an XP.
yeah,
So you're automatically going, well, my brain's automatically going, well, I want to hit harder. So how do I? Okay, so I need to work with hazardous terrain. Under pressure is the same thing, but if it's attack 3, but +2 if they're between two walls or a wall and obstacle, and that's kind of training you to play cards a certain way.
yeah,
So some classes, yeah, easy. It's almost like Bone Shape is almost summon. If you summon a pet, gain two damage to yourself and gain XP. So keep punching
yeah,
your face and gain XP basically. Whereas Media I found was a lot more conditional with its setup, and there wasn't as many reliable. I will create an XP. Thank you.
yeah,
And that was probably one of the bigger issues that I was struggling with. I don't know if it could be balanced. I guess I think it'll be too much of a headache to make it balanced. I
yeah.
actually think that yeah, I don't think it's tied into their power directly. But then again, there were cards that I didn't bring or look at, and I can't even tell you off the top of my head right now that the cards that I binned because they didn't suit the playstyle I was going for had easy XP tied into them,
Yeah.
and they might have, they definitely might have.
So that's the kind of part that I want to expand on a little bit more. Is it like, yeah, because I kind of felt, and again, it's like the vibe of the whole thing is that, hey, like, your XP will be on the cards that the game wants you to play a certain play style with the character, right?
Mm,
Like, around hazardous terrain for the meteor or whatever. I think where maybe it doesn't align completely is when you don't want to play that particular way, or not, you don't want to play it at all, but you don't want to 100% go down that path. And therefore, you either are skipping cards, paying different cards, or not wanting to have to maximize being on difficult terrain, right? Like, you're like, I don't want to play the difficult terrain game, right? That's okay. But I just want to use this card. But then you're almost not getting your XP because it's like, well, you're not doing this the way we want you to do it. So therefore you don't get an XP. Or like your schlong that hits, and for every what difficult terrain you put down, it gives you an XP.
Every target that I put underneath, the if once there, yeah, every target it hits
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah,
So
gets
it's
an
like
XP.
maximizing, but it's like, is it maximizing in a way that you want to? Because I know there was times when you were like, oh, but I want to do this, but I don't want to do it because I'm not going to get the maximum value out of it. So it's just little things like that. And the example for myself that I'll kind of go between is that like the banner spear felt really good because it was like you do formations, you get XP, right? And that, if you want to play that style, right, which is most of the character, you're going to get a shitload of XP. And again, we talked about the group really helping to do that. That felt good because it was like have puzzle, solve puzzle, do fun
Mm.
things that I want to do, get XP. That worked. The Geminate, on the other hand, was a lot of you got to burn cards. I don't want to burn cards. No, no, no. Well, then you're not leveling, right? And most of what I've heard from really early level Geminate, and I suffered for this at the start, was that I play very conservative in Gloomhaven, and that's kind of gone into Frosthaven, although I'm starting to get a bit reckless now. And so playing the Geminate first up, I was like, I'm not burning cards. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. I'm not going to burn cards on my first turn or second turn or
Mm.
third turn. Like, so yes, you can learn, but that's almost like, okay, that's how I have to play the character. Because if you
Yeah.
don't burn cards with the Geminate, you're just never going to level. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's other characters like that. It's like if you don't pick these cards or if you don't do these things, you're just not going to level. And again, it's not an inherent problem, but it is if the experience, and it's a bad word to use, but the experience you have of playing the game is heightened by the leveling up process, like getting new cards, getting new perks, etc., etc. If that's part of that whole fun, it's kind of restraining it a little bit. So it's
The
like,
mm.
yeah,
The only issue I see with that is that the fun side of it's subjective. That's the only part because you could literally build a whole deck around experience, and it won't play optimally. But you just take all the easiest cards that are going to generate XP, and you're not going to do much damage because I'm going to spend nearly every second turn blowing up a random obstacle for no reason, right? Or
yeah,
putting hazardous terrain tile tokens down to not have something go through it, only to then use cooling or something to turn it into an obstacle for an XP to then break it on the following. You could. So I guess yeah, you the it's really hard for them to make it. I don't know, fair overall. Just the only way I can see it is if the XP system has a complete overhaul, and you are
totally.
generating XP in a different way. It can't be through
Well, that's
monster kills unless
yeah.
you honestly have group XP or there's something along those lines so that it's not something that people feel fixated on or feel like they have to bring certain cards in order to generate it. Or in my case, I bring all the cards I do want and then complain that I'm not generating enough because all the cards that generate them are back at home. I think it will need to be rehauled.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think that there's any small tweaks you can make to change it so that it doesn't feel like that. And again, I want to be super clear. I don't think it's broken. I think it works exactly. It works really well for how the
Yes.
game works. And I think you play enough of the game and you get acclimatized to how that works. It's just an interesting thing because I've noticed it even from Gloomhaven. Like I remember there was cards for the Craighard that were like hit this thing and push it, but and then gain XP, or do this thing and gain the XP. It's like, but if it dies, you don't get it, or if you don't destroy the obstacle, it doesn't get. There was these weird interactions where you can do the thing, but not do enough of the thing to warrant you getting XP. Now I'm sure some of that stuff's been changed in 2.0, but I still do notice them a little bit uh in Frosthaven, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's always just jumped out as a bit of a I don't. Yeah. Again, I don't think
It's
that
an
it's
interesting
broken.
thought. It is an interesting thought. The only thing I can think about is if they kept it relatively consistent, um, and crushing. I mean, obviously with the drifter, moving the tokens back and forth is the whole thing that is the shtick of the drifter. But what if they just went, okay, you're not gonna get this up and down thing anymore. If you play a persistent, the majority of persistents that become lost cards, they're two
Mhm.
XP, right? And that's it. And you got a bit more of a universal thing across all the characters to keep that kind of consistency.
Yeah.
So the media, because they've got that extra requirement of you want a little extra damage, you have to do something pretty niche to get that XP. Well, we're gonna blanket that with every other character as well. So they're gonna like for the Astral example, I have to blow 2 elements. I'm not talking about the infusions.
Mm.
Infusions are the persistence I'm talking about. You
Yep.
get the 2 elements, you put it in front of you, it gives me 2 XP. I have 3 of them out, that's 6. Right? But then if I want to play the Emerald 5 attack with the water, I still need 2 elements. And that'll generate me 1 XP. So then everyone needs a difficult kind of thing like that to then generate their XP instead of, the basic ones that some people can just spam.
Yeah, that's where I don't think a different version of tailoring it to each character's abilities changes anything. I think it just shifts the problem into a different problem, right?
Yes.
Like you're still going to end up with oh, well, this is weird because I didn't want to do that. And now I have to do that during XP.
And I'll
Honestly,
I'll be clear, I like the system. I'm with you. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it
yeah.
exactly the way it is now. All right, I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think the only thing I can think of, and you can't do this because we can't like Matrix style, like mind. No, it was not Matrix. The Men in Black style, like erase your memory. With the little flash thing that erases
With
your brain.
Tom Cruise.
No, Men in Black.
Yeah,
Will Smith.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go to a world where we play Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, but there's no XP on the cards, and you just get 15 XP at the end of each scenario, on top of what you normally get, right? So you normally get 10 for completing it. You just get 15 for
Oh,
5 XP if you lose a scenario, 15 XP if you don't. Now, can you imagine in a world where you don't know that there's XP on cards? That wouldn't seem that bad. You'd be like, oh yeah, it's clearly there's a progression, and here's how you do it. I mean, on average, people are getting 15, right? That's probably about the higher average-ish.
yeah.
Like, again, I'm not saying change it, and I don't
No,
think it's broken. I
no.
just like in a world where you completely take that away from the cards.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of that
Just but like
because
you
it
say
can't be
with the
performance
formation
based.
thing, right? Like you say you set up a card that's really difficult to get off and you get it off, you want to be rewarded. And, killing things is a group reward,
Yeah,
right? Your reward technically should be fat numbers on the damage meters, but they don't exist in the
that's
game.
so that's the
So,
thing. Like, I never see the XP component of a card as a reward.
yeah,
I think
okay.
maybe that's it, right? Is that I see the XP component on a card as just uh, a mandatory element of like the admin process. Like they're cards that I need to play in order to progress my character. And until the last few turns where we've won it and we just want to burn and get XP, I really don't look at the XP.
Mm,
Like I don't look at the number and go, "Oh, I'm going to play this over this turn because it's going to generate me XP,"
mm,
or "I'm going to play this to generate these elements so that I can eat them with this to generate the XP." Because it's something they've done really well, actually, is they haven't tied XP purely just to like eating an element. It's got a bonus. There's not like attack 3, eat ice to attack 3 and gain an XP. It's attack 4 and gain an XP. So they incentivize you to go, hey, this is better,
yeah.
right? And then you get an XP from it. So yeah, I think that's fine, but I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about, and it has
What
been
just
interesting seeing. I haven't been stuck with a class that sucks at XP because once I realized I just had to burn all my cards with a Geminate, I was like, this is fine.
Yeah, well, then there's the whole other bit at the end of a scenario where once it's a guaranteed win, everyone just starts burning, right?
Yeah.
Burning persistence and all that kind of stuff if they can, which,
And it
you
falls
know,
into the same bucket as the loot thing. It's the same conversation of going like, oh, how do we loot? How do we do this? Do we just spend 5 turns looting and leave one monster running around? Do we spend 5 turns burning cards for XP? Should we just say I would play these cards? Blah blah blah. Right? You end up with exactly the same problem, and I feel like just don't do any of it. Just play the game. If you can eke out a bit of XP in the last couple of turns, do it. But don't extend the game by half an hour
yeah,
to loot and or XP. Spend that time in the outpost phase.
yeah. You're giving me another idea, by the way. In the experience bot, every time it hits something, you gain an XP. Every time it gets hit, you lose an XP. I'll flesh this out a little bit
Ooh.
more. But
Okay. Yeah, yeah, okay. But yeah,
no,
that's it. That's all. It was
no,
it wasn't a rant. I think it's
no,
fine.
it's a good
It
chat.
works. I'm just interested because yeah, they all seem to work differently.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to actually delve further into such a simple part of the game. And
Yeah.
one that's fairly overlooked, I would dare say. Like, no one really thinks about it too much because it's really tied to an individual. It's more when you start comparing it and try to break down well, why is this person getting this when
Yeah.
this person's not?
And I
Yeah.
think there are themes you can see. Like you said, burn cards usually give you 2. Persistence usually give you 2. Unless it's a returning persistent, then it usually gives you 1. Summons usually give you 2. Unless they're not burn summons and they give you 1. Like that kind of process is usually pretty standard. It's the other random ones. Like I've got one that's attack 2, transfer attack 2. It's level 1 card. I've got another card that's level 4 card that's attack 2, transfer attack 4, but you get an XP. So they're basically exactly the same card on the top, which give the XP. So one's at level 4. It's like, here's a real reward for choosing the level 4 card. It's like, okay.
You're still going to
Like,
take the first one, though.
well, I'm still going to use the first one because
Yeah.
it's still good. But
It's just
yeah,
going to
yeah.
feel worse every time now.
Correct.
Well,
Anyway.
we will wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us this week. We will catch up with all of you next week when we take on episode 3 of Cassandra, the Shitty Claymore. I've been your host, Eddie. I've been joined again by Gaz.
And remember, when it comes to rolling terribly, it's all in the Claymore.